People can say whatever they want, but Ronda Rousey was that girl at one point.
I think you can make a case for Ronda being one of the most overrated fighters. She didn't end up being as good as people were saying at the time. Remember we were talking about her versus Floyd? Remember we were talking about her being Mike Tyson?
When I couldn't give anything anymore, like, they hated me for it.
Ronda Rousey is a polarizing figure on the internet. She has a devoted fan base, but like many famous people, she also has her detractors. In her case, lots of them. Her confidence has always been off-putting to some and inspiring to others. But these days, after nearly 15 years in the limelight, people only seem to see the flaws. Recently, in interviews with her new book, she has taken aim at her former employer, the WWE.
Steph and Triple H, I think they're honestly doing their best, but I mean, I think that Vince McMahon just created a fundamentally sick environment, and if Ari Emanuel, who bought it out from WME, is going to be able to actually make this multi-billion-dollar dysfunctional organization into one that functions, he's got to clean out all of Vince's cronies. He's got to completely clean house and remove Vince's influence completely.
Called herself the best fighter of all time.
I know that, like, I'm the greatest fighter that has ever lived.
And created a buzz about her legacy and feelings towards her accomplishments.
Suddenly everything that I accomplished meant nothing. After that second fight, and I saw how all these people that I was coming back to fight for had suddenly turned against me, all of my appreciation for them turned into resentment. And I just didn't want to have anything to do with them anymore. I didn't want to do anything for them anymore because I gave them everything that I had, and they hated me for not being able to give them more.
All of this got me thinking back on a video from earlier on in the channel that I made that covered Ronda Rousey's impact on women's sports and her MMA career. I stand by my statements on what she has done and continue to be a fan of hers. But I want to take an objective look at her status as a brash anti-hero and how society built her up and continually attempts to break her down.
First of all, she was very confident while she was the champion, and some people would say arrogant, and because of that, there's all these people that are waiting for you to fall.
The definition of an anti-hero is as follows: a central character in a story, movie, or drama who lacks conventional heroic attributes. Sometimes a word just perfectly describes a situation. Welcome back to Unlikely Success. Like, comment, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe. Let's get into Ronda Rousey's run as an anti-hero and how this shapes the narrative surrounding her today. Part 1. The build. Ronda made a career out of rubbing people the wrong way and being unapologetic for it. Her confidence may have often been seen as arrogance, and on various occasions she displayed poor sportsmanship. But through it all, she displayed charisma and an attractiveness desired in athletes. She had what you would call the it factor. She was the definition of a bad bitch. In her rise, the UFC even marketed her this way. But why? Because the fans ate it up, me included. Rousey was kicking ass, taking no prisoners, and creating an image that we have not seen before or since in women's sports. She was not a hero or a villain. She was Rambo. Rowdy Ronda Rousey was not nice, and we still wanted her to win. By definition, she truly was, and still is, an anti-hero. Dana White knew he had a superstar on his hands, and he poured gas on the fire. Ronda would go on to sell millions of pay-per-views, model, act, and become a global icon, while being seen as indestructible. But rarely does a rise this meteoric end without a fall. Part 2. The breakdown. In the midst of Ronda's dominating undefeated streak, she began to diverge from her patented armbar and started taking comfort in striking with opponents. In November of 2015, Holly Holm would end the invincible persona of Ronda Rousey. A clean head kick would strip away the aura of destruction and expose vulnerability in the UFC superstar. Her detractors celebrated, narratives around her changed, and she went silent. Saying she handled this poorly could be seen as an understatement based on public perception. After a year-long hiatus, Rousey would come back in stunning fashion by getting dismantled by Amanda Nunes. Ronda was now reeling in the public eye.
Have you been able to, do you think about the last couple fights? Do you think about what happened, or have you processed it all? The end of the last fight against Amanda or Holly? I think I'd just rather not talk about that right now.
Many who previously loved her abandoned her, and she was replaced as the face of the UFC by a new Irish anti-hero who was louder, bolder, and on a streak of his own. Part 3. The Rebrand. She would leave the UFC after her 2016 loss and never return. Moving into the next phase of her career, she would enter the arena of pro wrestling, specifically WWE. While on the surface, it may appear to be a natural fit, leveraging stardom from an adjacent space is not always seamless. Rousey would immediately be thrust onto the top of the WWE women's roster and challenged for titles. She was considered what they call in wrestling a babyface or a good guy, and thought to be a natural fit to become a promotional star. Unfortunately, wrestling is a completely different animal than the UFC. It's a very political business, and it has an atmosphere where talent is expected to, quote, pay their dues to make it to the top. Ronda was seen as an outsider who did not love the business, had not put in the time and effort of others, and was not ready for the spot she had been handed.
When you love this, you look to try and make it better. How can I make this better? She was coming from a different industry. She was a star, and she should have been handled differently in terms of, I think she had such a great first outing that everybody thought, oh, she can wrestle. And I mean this with respect, but she couldn't wrestle. But everybody treated Ronda like she already knew it, because when she first came in, she was good in that first bout, but she was also working with Kurt Angle, she was working with Triple H, Stephanie McMahon. It was a well-rehearsed match, you know, because everybody wanted her to succeed. And then it was like, okay, she can do this off to the races. And that was mishandling her, because she was, you know, a star in her own right, and she had done so much for MMA, and she came in and I think she found a place that she enjoyed, she liked, but she never like sought to do it from a young age. And I think that changes the experience that you have when you go into a place.
As time went on, Ronda was seeing varied reactions from the fans, and she did not seem as happy as she once did performing for the company. Her earlier appeal as a badass had largely faded. She left WWE, and Rousey has said the following about future endeavors.
Just, you know, trying to be home with the family and, you know, be a full-time mom.
Part 4. Why? Now that we have reviewed how we got here, let's discuss why we got here. Rowdy Ronda Rousey was once arguably the most famous woman in sports. Her persona was one of an extremely confident ass kicker, and she gave little reason to believe it was not who she was. Unfortunately, over the years, as the shine left, stances on her never softened. Stories have even surfaced that
the people, when I was in the UFC in 2018, who would put the mic on, the audio people, the camera people, the people plugging the cable in to make sure the lights are on it, the people the producers who help do stuff, every time Ronda Rousey's name came up, she was in the WWE at the time, I remember she had just done some big pay-per-view. I forget which one, SummerSlam or something. And somebody mentioned her, and it was like, the guy putting the mic on my shirt was like, that F&B, blah, 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 blah. And it went around the room like, oh God. Everybody had a horror story about Ronda Rousey being impossible to them.
Her recent interviews have shown some humility and discussed grievances from her past, but we have never seen her fully humbled by her defeats. And I believe the masses see this as a character flaw. I cannot disagree with their logic, but does a superstar really owe this to their fans?
I don't know.
Anti-heroes are popular because of their traits that defy prototypes of how they should act. But when they fall back to earth, we shun these characteristics. Supporting the anti-hero comes with the extra baggage of acknowledging it will be hypocritical in the future, and all parties may be liable for understanding this. Ronda Rousey built a character in her rise to becoming a star. The character was flawed, showed both desirable and undesirable qualities, but most found it appealing. Creating this persona comes with a cost, and that cost is derision. Polarizing figures often become targets once they start losing status. Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor, John Jones, and Oscar De La Hoya are all examples of polarizing figures in the fight game who later become mocked by many. Ronda skyrocketed in popularity due to her personality, looks, and brazen disregard for opponents. It only worked when she was riding high, but most are not able to avoid falling. She is still a massive success story who accomplished feats we have never seen before and may never see again, but her story is steering toward a cautionary tale rather than a fairy tale. My personal fandom will root for her success always, and we all love a comeback story. This has been the unlikely success.
Now you are becoming the face of women's MMA very quickly. You just made your pro debut this year in 2010, and last year in 2010, and already people are saying, you are now the person to look at for women's MMA. How does that make you feel?
I feel like women's MMA does need a lot more, not so much say faces all the time, but they need more, people that people recognize. And I feel like I'm probably the most capable of filling that role. I've been in 2 Olympics. I know what it's like to, represent myself very well under a lot of pressure. And I don't feel that nervous about it. I feel like I'm ready, and someone needs to do it.